How's it going, everybody? How are we doing tonight? It's JubeTube coming at you with another video. As you can see, I got a little quarantine scruff going on. But what we're gonna go ahead and do today, we're gonna go through my personal opinion on the best junglers for patch 10.10. Now, disclaimer, currently I am almost plat 1, and generally speaking I've been diamond like the last 3 years, so this is coming from a high elo point of view. So if some of your champions are ranked a little bit lower, it could be due to their viability in low elo, not being a general indication of their viability in high elo. Again, don't take it too personal if your favorite champ is ranked pretty low, because there's a lot of champs that I hold near and dear to my heart that are just not in a good state right now. We do have quite a few junglers to go through, so I'll try and keep the explanations short and sweet. S tier is defined as the strongest jungle champs in the game. Jungle champions that really feel like they just have no counterplay, in my opinion, and they just feel extremely, extremely strong. A tier is your pretty strong champions. B tier is kind of like the average. C tier can kind of be more like off meta, like you can make it work, but it's not necessarily gonna be the best pick. And then D tier is gonna be the worst of the worst. The absolute worst of the worst. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. The one thing about this list, I don't see Set on here, so we'll go ahead and just get that out of the way. It's kind of like an honorable mention. I think for jungle purposes, Set is in the B tier, simply because his base mobility isn't exactly great. Ganks aren't impossible to do with him, but it can be a little bit more difficult than it would normally be with higher tier junglers. But that being said, Set is an absolute fiend in the top lane and even in support right now, so Set in the B tier. Amumu, we're gonna go ahead and place him in the B tier. Amumu is, in my opinion, a pretty good champion. He is fairly susceptible to ganks in the early game. He's a jungler that can do raptors pretty easily, which is always, always, always a good plus. He has a good team fight and good amounts of CC, and he's pretty good against tanks. He's got a lot of build paths that you can do. You can do full AP, you can do hybrid, you can do tank, and still be pretty good. With that being said, there are still champions that are just stronger than him. Camille. I'm going to go ahead and put Camille in the C tier for junglers. Camille is a very good, very aggressive, hyper early game jungler who goes in for gank after gank after gank, mainly because she can't really do the jungle too well other than a couple of specific camps. So she doesn't farm the jungle too well. Her success relies solely on if she can get ganks off. If you don't pull ganks off as Camille in the early game, your game's basically over. With that being said, Camille as a champion is very good. Has a lot of really good tools in her kit to kind of abuse in the higher elo, so that's why she's not in the D tier. Diana, another champion that's very good in the mid lane. When it comes to jungle, I feel like she's kind of mid tier. She does have really good high damage and can take high use of Conquer. Has good gap closers, and her new ult is pretty good. Echo, A tier. Echo as a champion, I feel, is S tier everywhere, but kind of more of an A tier in the jungle. is kind of like an A plus S minus character. I don't think he is a champion that can necessarily abuse the S tier champions, but at the same time, he can pretty much abuse all of the A tier champions. So he's kind of like a tweener, but Echo as a champion is just absolutely broken. Especially in the mid lane, you know. I just feel like his ultimate is just the biggest get out of jail free card. I mean, I feel like it's always off cooldown. It really shouldn't give him his HP back. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of problems with Echo. At least another A tier champion. A very good ganker, a very good damage dealer. Yeah, there's just a lot you can do with Elise, especially in the early game. You can really go lane to lane gank. You can do your jungle. You can be aggressive and invade the enemy jungler's jungle and win most matchups. But she's not at the point where I would call her uncounterable. She's just a really solid champion. Then we have Evelyn. Okay, so the thing about Evelyn is, in lower elos, she's really bad. Because in lower elos, people don't know how to gank. People don't know how to properly do damage with her. They don't know how to hit their abilities and make the most out of it. In high elo, though, a champion that is literally invisible and can't be spotted on wards and has high damage, crowd control, a get out of jail free card, like this champion is extremely frustrating and annoying to go against. Then we've got Fiddlesticks. This isn't an updated picture, but I'm basing it off the new Fiddlesticks. Like I said, this is for patch 10.10. Fiddlesticks is in the B tier. A lot of people might have problems with this, especially if you don't take a core look at what Fiddlesticks does right now as a champion. I think he's got a great passive. I think he's got a great Q. I think his E is pretty darn good as well. It's got a lot of range on it. And of course his ult can win you a team fight by itself. The problem is for Fiddlesticks to do a lot of his damage. Basically, people kind of have to be stupid, and I say that in the sense that his W doesn't do damage until the very end of the duration when it gets that little pop. That little pop. So unless they're literally fighting into you, all they have to do is run away, get out of the W, and then fight you, and you just don't do damage. But his ult is a great tool, his passive's great, his Q is great, and his E is pretty good, so I think B tier is fair for him. Then we have Gragas. When I was initially thinking about Gragas, I was thinking B or C. I'm going to go ahead and put him in the B tier because when you've got a really good Gragas jungle, he can take over the game. Gragas does have pretty high base damage, so he has the option to build tank. And then of course, if you've ever watched Banunu or anyone play AP Gragas, you can get some pretty stylish plays. With that being said, you do kind of want to have your flash. You kind of want to have your flash if you're going to go for a gank. And yeah, he's really good in Rek'Sai, I think, in my personal experience. Then we've got Graves. Here we have our first S tier champion. A ranged champion that doesn't take damage on his clears. That's tanky, that doesn't die, that's fast. Especially with the Korean build running phase rush. If you've played against a good Graves this patch, you know what I'm talking about, where it just feels so miserable. There's literally nothing you can do against this champion. This champion does so much damage. This champion does not take damage. And this champion's really not even that bad gank-wise because his W does slow, and he's just a great duelist. You can't really fight the champion at all. So yeah, S tier, broken champ. Hecarim, when the meta is good for Hecarim is very good. When the meta is, having that fast character to get hyper ganks off of, he's very good. He's kind of fallen out of the meta right now, just kind of with power creep and how strong other champions are. I think he's a good pick, and I think if you're a low elo jungler, definitely pick up some Hecarim because he's very easy to pull off ganks and do a lot of damage with. But at the same time, the higher elo you get, the better they ward, theoretically, and the less this champion succeeds when compared to junglers that are higher than him on this list. Then we've got Ivern. Ivern is a character that I feel like if he was kind of a normal jungler with his kit, he'd definitely be A tier, especially with how dependent on bot lane this patch really kind of feels. But because, he is more of a unique style of play in the jungle, he does take some practice to master. A good Ivern player can be pretty oppressive in terms of, him stealing your buffs and things like that. But Ivern as a champion, extremely susceptible to counter ganking or counter jungling. And a lot of the best junglers right now are counter junglers. With that being said, once he gets his items, and he sits on that Caitlyn or that Misfortune or that Vayne, and it does feel pretty difficult to go up against an Ivern just because of how much better he makes the team around him. Then we have Jarvan. Jarvan's definitely A tier. Great ganks, good base damage. An ultimate that's really good at catching people out and keeping people contained. Jarvan can build full tank and dive your backline and just soak up tons of damage. He can build AD and kind of one-shot you periodically over time. Yeah, Jarvan's just pretty darn good. He's a champion as well that I would say if you're in low elo and want to pick up a jungler that you can start to play once you start to climb the ranks. Jarvan's definitely a good one to pick up. Then we have Jax. Jax is a champion that I feel like is I wouldn't say extremely good in the top lane. I feel like he's pretty good in the jungle. I say he's more along the B tier lines just because right now the best junglers, like I said, are counter junglers who get off a lot of ganks. The meta right now isn't necessarily farm city, and with Jax you really want to be able to farm and get your items, so I feel like he's much better in the top lane. With that being said, if he does get a couple of kills in the early game, he can really get rolling and really be oppressive. But it does take, a special character to kind of get him to work in the jungle as opposed to just taking him in the top lane and being a lot more successful. Then we have Karthus, obvious S tier. This character does it all. I feel like he's one of the more unpunishable characters in the game. He does jungle extremely fast and extremely efficiently, and in the higher elo, where players kind of know how to kite out their camps, his jungle clear isn't even unhealthy. He can counter jungle just because of how fast that he does kill the camps, and even if he dies, he's still going to be useful eventually because of his high damage and his ultimate that hits 5 people. Yeah, I just really feel like this character has no weaknesses, and it's just a ticking time bomb even if you kind of shut him down early. Next character, S tier, Kayn. I don't know if this one is controversial, but In patch 10.9, when they buffed his cooldown on his Q and the slow on his W, I looked at that and said, this character is going to be broken. And what do you know? Rost, or Red Form Kane, started running around and taking over the league. He's getting a small nerf on Rost this patch, but I still think he's going to be one of the more oppressive junglers in the game still. He does Raptors extremely fast, he does Krugs extremely fast. I just really don't understand the buffs to his Q cooldown. I felt like it was a fairly short cooldown, but now that they buffed it, and he pushes max CDR in his base items with Conqueror and Death Dance and Warrior and Black Cleaver, he just feels like he doesn't have any weakness at all. I literally feel like you just can't fight the character at all. Then we have Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is a character that I'm debating either S or A. I'm gonna float with S here, simply because he does so much damage. It's actually ridiculous. He does so much damage. He can go invisible and do more damage. He's got great mobility, great jungle pass, great jungle clears. Kha'Zix just really feels like a champion that, especially like if you give him one kill, the game is just over, right? Like, it's almost like playing, how do I explain this? Playing against like a Ghost Darius who gets like 2 kills in the early game. Like, it just feels like you're, uh-oh, it's over. You know what I mean? Kindred, Kindred, I feel like right now, in the right hands, can be really good, but I feel like most Kindred players aren't very good. And every time I get a Kindred on my team, they don't play well. So for this reason, I feel like Kindred is floating in between the C and the B tier. Personally, I don't mind that, because when Kindred is very good and is in the meta, it's very frustrating to play against. I really don't like ranged characters in general, just because my character base is, generally speaking, melee characters, and I feel like these ranged characters with tons of mobility and damage just feel very difficult to sort of fight. Next we have Lee Sin, A tier. In the past I would have put him kind of in the B tier, but Lee Sin as a champion feels almost like you don't even have to be good with him anymore to succeed. I mean, obviously you have to be good with him to succeed, but I feel like they've just buffed his damage so much over time. Like remember back in the day when you fought a Lee Sin, and he's very strong in the early game, and the thought process was, we just kind of waited out, he's gonna fall off eventually and start to do no damage. I feel like he never falls off anymore. I feel like he is always in a position to fight you. His kick is great, his mobility is great, his shield, he can shield people, he can slow. I feel like this champion's just extremely good, and honestly, if I had consistently low ping, I would play a lot of games of Lee Sin, and I would really try to master this champion. This is a champion that once mastered is definitely S tier, but because he is a little bit harder to master, I would put him in the A tier right now. It's kind of like Riven, right? Where you just need to put more games into Riven. You need to put a lot of games into Riven. But once you finally learn the champion, there's nothing you can do, or there's nothing anyone can do against you. Next we have Master Yi. Because this is high elo, I'm gonna go ahead and put Master Yi in the A tier. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if Master Yi is picked, they're picking Taric, and they're gonna be doing the funnel strat. And if you've ever played against the funnel strat where the 2 players are good, can you even win? I mean, honestly, if the Yi and the Taric are good, you really just can't win. Like, it's better to just dodge. This stuff is so oppressive. And then even as alone as a champion, you build the Rage Blade, the Wit's End, Blood Razor build, and you really can't die either. It takes a lot of burst damage and crowd control to take care of Yi. But because players are just spamming Yi Derek, it feels like I've got to put this character here, even though I'd like to put this character here. I'd like to see this character in the gutter, not gonna lie. Wukong, top lane, he would be S tier. A to S tier, kind of in between. In the jungle, I'd give him B tier. I feel like his jungle clears aren't great, but his ult is still really, really good. He does make excellent use of Conquer, does do pretty good damage, and is very difficult to kill. But because his clears are kind of meh, I'm going to put him in the B tier. Nasus. This is a character that I'm sure you expected me to put in the D tier. I'm going to go ahead and put him in the C tier, simply because he really doesn't take damage to the jungle camps because of his passive. His jungle camps do take a little bit longer for him to do because he wants to get his stacks. He wants to stack all of them. But because of the Q change, that gives him 12 stacks. Is it 12? It is 12 per large camp. It's doable. Is it great? Not really, but it's doable. And because he does have a lot of high stats built into his kit, his weather reaches farther out there, I feel like you can definitely pull off Jungle Nasus, but I wouldn't really pick him over any of these champions here. Nidalee just got a buff. Nidalee's one of those champions that when she's in the meta with the players who are really good at playing her, it's just brutal. It's brutal, my guys. It is brutal up in here. It's brutal. She does so much damage. She counter jungles so quickly. She can gank and just stupid high mobility. I'm gonna put her in the A tier right now just because there's not a lot of characters playing here, but because of the buffs, this champ might be floating up to S tier soon, so stay tuned for that. Nocturne. Nocturne, we're gonna go ahead and put him in the B tier, simply because I wouldn't pick Nocturne over any of these champions, although he is a pretty good assassin. He can obviously blind the map, go in, do a lot of damage, things like that. Just a decent champ, but an average one nonetheless. Nunu, generally speaking, if this was a couple of patches ago, I'd put him in the A tier, but for now I'm going to put him in the B tier, simply because junglers are starting to do more and more damage. He does fit the kind of hyper gank meta, but at the same time he doesn't fit the damage meta. Do I think Nunu's a great character? Yes. Should you learn this character, especially if you're low elo? Yes. Pick up Nunu. You won't be disappointed. But is he better than these characters? I wouldn't say so. Olaf, easy S tier. Champ is straight cancer. This champ is straight cancer. Cancer, cancer, cancer. Straight up cancer. Can't be crowd controlled. Tons of damage. The lower health he gets, the harder he is to kill. He can just fight anything. Yeah, easiest S tier I've ever placed in my opinion. Pantheon Jungle, I'm gonna give it a C, mainly because not only do I not know anyone who plays Pantheon Jungle, but honestly I've never seen it, nor have I never played it with new Pantheon, so I just don't have enough information, so I can't put him in the B tier just based solely off of information. Rammus, I'm gonna go ahead. I want to put him in the B tier because I do love Rammus, but I'm going to put it in the C tier right now. Mainly because he is a niche character. You play Rammus into full AD. He is a pretty good ganker in the fact that he's extremely fast, and he can kind of lock someone down, and in the hyper late game, if you're quite a bit ahead, you can pretty much one-shot an entire team with your armor and just be super tanky and annoying. But with that being said, in higher elos, it's a lot harder to pull that off with Rammus than it used to be, because they have kind of nerfed him a little bit here and there. Rek'Sai, we're going to go ahead and put Rek'Sai in the B tier as well. Pretty close to being A tier, but at the same time, The Rek'Sai player really has to be good, because if you're going to pick this champion and you don't have any experience on it, you're not going to have a good time. Pretty good ganker, does good damage, but that burrow passive can be a little bit difficult for players who are newer and trying to get into the jungle. Rengar. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the B tier for now, simply because there's like 5 people that can play this champion, Scrubnoob being one of them, Tikar being another. Nightblue can play a decent Rengar when he isn't trolling. But if you're playing the jungle, generally speaking, I would much rather see a Rengar than see one of these champions. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put him in the B. However, like I said, a good Rengar is pretty crazy, and you all know the one-shots. You've all experienced it. Everybody's experienced it once. Sejuani, B tier. Great crowd control, great ability to gank. Decent-ish clears, but just isn't very great in the meta right now. She's pretty strong in competitive play and can definitely lock someone down if you need to, but I feel like there's just better champions for solo queue right now. Shaco, same thing. If the Shaco player, same thing as Rengar. If the Shaco player is really good, you're not gonna have a great time. But most Shaco players aren't very good. Shaco can go AD or AP, although the AP build is a lot more successful right now. I don't know, it just takes a special player to play this champion and play at this level, you know what I mean? Shyvana, we're gonna go ahead and put Shyvana in the A tier. The build path right now is definitely full AP. You just spit fireballs, and not only is it strong, but it's extremely fun. If you guys haven't tried AP Shyvana, give it a shot. It's my pocket pick. I love playing AP Shyvana. It's so fun. Now we get to our first D tier character in Skarner. Skarner is a champion that, if he controls a zone in the early game, he can do some pretty good damage. His jungle clears aren't unhealthy, but they're not exactly super fast. And he does have that. He does have the CC factor. He can ult. He can stun. But man, this character just does not do damage. And in the meta of junglers doing damage, you can't get away with doing no damage. If you play a lot of Skarner and are looking and are just fed up and are looking to a kind of a similar niche character to play, to switch to, just pick up Sejuani. Simple as that. Sylas as a character is extremely broken. As a jungler, he's just kind of mid-tier in my opinion. Taliyah, if the Taliyah player's extremely good, definitely A tier, but it's kind of a very niche pick, right? It's picked by just a couple of people, and those people are pretty good at it, but for the most part, Taliyah's just played in the mid lane, and Taliyah in general is just not a very popular champion. Trundle, I'm gonna go ahead and put Trundle in the B tier as well. If they pick heavy tank comp, you pick Trundle, and he instantly becomes an S tier champion. If there's no tanks, he does still do pretty good damage. He still does do pretty good damage. But for the most part, you're going to be wishing that you picked a different jungler if they don't have any tanks, in my personal opinion. Twitch, D tier. Twitch is not good in the jungle. There's literally one person who can play Twitch jungle, and that's Red IRL. If you're going to play Twitch jungle and your name isn't Red IRL, just don't do it. And here we come to the saddest story of all time. If you guys don't know, I'm an Udyr player. I fell in love with the game because of Udyr. And not to sound like a fanboy, but because of Trick2G, I mean, let's be real, if you played Udyr, you were probably playing Udyr because you saw Trick 2G. This character is so bad. It's so bad in this meta. If you've ever watched my streams on Twitch, I've kind of gone over why Udyr is just so bad right now. In low elo, I can kind of vouch for like a B tier, because he does succeed in low elo. He has good tools to get both crabs from your jungler, and he can fight in the early game. But at a certain point, this character just does not do damage. Phoenix is absolutely worthless. And if you're trying to make AP work, I've tried so much, but it literally takes you 5 items for AP to work. And by then, everybody's just doing too much damage. This champion is just so bad right now, and it's so sad. And Riot slapped 5 movement speed on him and are expecting it to change the world, and it makes me want to cry. But Udyr is definitely the worst champion in the entire game, and it's not even a question in my mind. Then we have Vi, a character I think is highly underrated. Good tankiness, great clears, great ganks, can armor shred to deal with tanks, can lock one person down, can basically one-shot. I really like the Aftershock build on Vi. I feel like if you play Vi, you're gonna have a good time if you put enough games into this champion. Volibear. This is obviously pre-work of Volibear. I'm super excited for the rework. I think he looks dope. And I think he's gonna be awesome. But right now, he's kind of middle of the tier. I think he's got good damage, good ganks, but he's definitely not on par with these characters. Warwick, definitely A tier, pretty close to S tier. Great sustain, great clears, great drag control, great ganks, damage reduction. I mean, this character does it all. Xin Zhao, I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the C tier. Xin Zhao is a character that's very meta-based. If the meta is good for Xin Zhao is S tier. If the meta is not good for Xin Zhao, he's extremely low tier. Then we have Zac. The only reason Zac does not go in S tier is because his jungle clears aren't too good in the early game. It takes a little bit for him to get going, but this character is incredible. I don't know why Nico is here. I don't know why this tier list grabbed Nico. But yeah, this is my tier list for the jungle. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anybody, if I missed one of your champions for the jungle. And let me know if you have any personal opinions on anything that I might have gotten wrong. I would love to hear your argument. And as always, I hope you guys had a great night's sleep. And I hope I could help you doze off to a bit. So peace out and have a good one.